Hello and welcome to W+9. This is Jennifer McGuire and I'm very honored to be a guest today. I'm using a few of the new W+9 stitching dies to create stitched shaped cards. I have several examples I'll be showing over on my blog, but here today I'm going to show you how to make this little guy who actually opens up and even stands on his little paws. It's a fun way to get more out of these plush stitch dies. The products I'll be featuring today include the W+9 Friends Pup Die. This is a new die set that can be used to create an adorable pup. You can sew it together with felt and add stuffing to the inside and make something dimensional, but I'm going to create a card with it today. It includes elements to turn this into a pup or even a pig, and it has some added flowers, hearts, and leaves. Many things you can do with this one die set. I'll also be using the W+9 Sucker for You dies. These have several different elements that you can build together to create the cutest little lollipops, plus the dies to create the words "Hey Sweetie" and "I'm a sucker for you." There are also even dies to create a three-dimensional bow that is really cute. Okay, so I'm going to start the die cutting of the pup. I'm using my die cut machine to cut from craft cardstock. I'm actually going to create 2 of these die cuts, so 2 little pup die cuts. Now from these 2 pup die cuts, I'm going to create a folding card. I also, while I have my machine out, I'm going to cut the little accessory pieces that form his paws and his face. You could cut this from any cardstock, but I recommend a heavyweight cardstock. Next, on one of the pup die cuts, I'm going to score a line towards the left edge, about a ½ inch from the left. This will create a hinge that will allow us to create a card. I'm using my bone folder to just reinforce that score line, so it's a nice hinge. The other pup die cut I'll just leave as is. We'll glue these together on this little hinge a little bit later, but first we need to do our stitching. For my stitching, I'm using DMC floss, which many people use for cross stitching, and I have all 6 plies together. It's very inexpensive and comes in many colors. I'm starting up on the left ear, right where that hinge is. I can put tape on the end here to hold it, since we'll be covering that part up. I'm doing a basic stitch where I just go up one hole, down the next, and I continue that until I am all the way to his left foot. So I'm really doing an every other stitch here. I find this the easiest way to stitch around this, and this is how I taught my daughter how to do it, and it works very well. So you'll see that there are gaps between the stitches, but don't worry about that, we'll fix that in a moment. So I'll do this quick stitch all the way around until I reach his left foot. Once I reach that foot, I'm going to reverse it and go back and stitch the same way I am to fill in all the gaps. Notice I'm not stitching anything on that hinge. We're going to save that for later. So really I'm stitching everything to the right of that score line. Now keep in mind there are many ways you can stitch around this edge. This is just one that I feel is simple and doesn't take a whole lot of concentration. Okay, once I reach back up at the ear where I started, I'm just going to tape off the 2 ends. Again, I can use tape here because this little hinged area will be covered. I'll just trim off the excess, and now I can do the same stitching on the other pup die piece. So this one doesn't have a score line, but I'm still going to start and stop at the same place I did with the other. So there are the 2 pieces, and they're ready to be sewn together. Now before I start stitching, I'll just put a piece of strong double-sided tape on the hinge to hold them together. You don't have to do this, but it keeps them in place as we do the stitching. This will be hidden so we don't have to worry about it. Now I can take the flat pup and put him right on top, and we have a little card formed. All we have to do is do the stitching on the remaining part, and that will hold the 2 pieces together. I'll start up by the ear, and I'm just going to hold the end of the string here. I'm not going to tape it this time because I want to hide it. And I'll start doing that every other stitch, up one hole, down the next, and repeat that until I reach his foot. Once I reach the end of the other stitching we've done, I'll return and just keep going and fill in the gaps. Okay, so when I reach back up to his ear, it's time to tie those 2 ends together. Now there are many great ways that you can finish off these 2 ends of this floss, but this is what I do because it's super easy and you can hide your little knot. So I have my two ends here. I'm going to tie a single knot. Then I'm coming in with a liquid adhesive and putting a little drop close to the knot on both sides. I'll push my finger against it to kind of press that liquid adhesive into the floss on both sides once again, and this will hold it there. Once this is dry, we can come back and trim off the excess. It's dry here, so I can trim it off, and you can't see that those two ends are glued down there. They're hidden by the stitches. I find that's a really easy way to do it. Keep in mind, I am not an expert at stitching. This is just what I find works best for stitching on my cards. Now, I did forget to attach his paws as I was sewing along those edges. That's okay. I can go and add those now. So I'll add a paw to the left here, and then I'll add the other paw to the front of the card only on the right. So let me show you again how I finish this off. I'll tie those two ends together, just one knot, kind of spread that apart. Use a drop of liquid adhesive on both sides of the knot. Press it with my fingers so that the floss ends are kind of overlap with those stitches next to where they came out. Just let that dry, and then you can trim it right down, right up to where the adhesive is. This really is a great way to hide the ends of your floss. And again, there are many ways to do this. I find this definitely the quickest to do. Okay, so now we have our little card, and it opens up nicely, and it'll even stand on those little feet. I did use my dies from that Plush Pup Die set to create little felt ears, a felt nose, and then instead of using the felt eyes, I decided to use little enamel dots, little black enamel dots, just for some added dimension. I decided to add a little smiley face to this little guy, so I actually took the paw die, and I'm cutting it from black felt. Then I'll take that felt die cut, line it up with that same die but a little offset, and I'll run it through my die cut machine again. And what I end up with is what looks like a little moon shape, and I'll trim that down to make a little smile. I could have cut this by hand, but I thought that this would be easier. And by the way, these dies cut felt and paper beautifully with pretty much any die cut machine you may have. I'm just using a liquid adhesive to add these pieces, but I do recommend using a fabric liquid adhesive. I just don't happen to have any. Okay, now it's time to decorate the front of our card, and I decided to have the pup hold a heart-shaped lollipop. For the stick of the lollipop, I cut from white craft foam. These dies cut craft foam great also, and you can even stitch the craft foam nicely. But I just used it for the little stick of the lollipop. For the lollipop itself, I used the heart stitch die from the Plush Pup set. I cut it from pink cardstock and pink felt and stitched those together in the same way I stitched around the pup. The reason I backed the pink felt with the pink cardstock was for some stability. Next, I glued together the two bow pieces. Just a little bit of liquid glue is all you need. Now I'm going to put a little more of the liquid glue down and wrap this piece around the center of the bow. And what we end up with is the cutest felt dimensional bow. You could even use this with cardstock if you wanted to. Okay, so now it's time to glue our little lollipop together. So again, you want to make sure you use a strong liquid adhesive here. Putting a little drop on the back of the stitched heart to hold the lollipop stick on. A little drop on the front to hold the bow on, and this will all get glued onto our card. Once I have it tucked under his little arm, I'll squeeze lots of strong liquid adhesive behind the lollipop to hold it in place. You could leave it loose if you wanted to, but I wanted to keep it there, so this was just a card that opened up simply. Next, I added the Hey Sweetie. I die cut that from some yellow cardstock, gluing it right onto his belly. Now you can see this stands up nicely on his feet. I did stamp a sentiment on the inside that says, "I hope this puts a smile on your face." And that's from the W+9 bird set. Now the plush pup fits nicely into a regular envelope. However, I put that lollipop in his hand so he's a little bit wider. So I would use either a 5x7 or 6x6 envelope for this. But if you just had the pup himself, you could use a regular envelope. I really like how this can stand up. Okay, I wanted to show you a few other examples that I created using the new W+9 die sets. I'll have these on a video over on my blog at Jennifer McGuire Inc. but I wanted to show you them here. So this one is just felt stitched onto cardstock. It doesn't open up like the card that I just showed you, but instead it's holding a heart that you can open up, and there's a greeting inside of there. I also added some stitched felt elements to the front of that, and this one has more felt on it, and I really like the look of the felt with the stitching. W+9 has beautiful colors of felt that they sell, and they're perfect for all of these dies. I think this is my favorite format for a card because that little folded heart fits perfectly in his hands, and check it out, it fits perfectly in an envelope. Okay, this next card features the Plush Pup Die set. However, I used the elements to turn him into a cute little pig, and I have him holding 2 stitched hearts. I cut the bottom half of him off and added him to the front of a note card. I stamped Missing You on the inside and did a W+9 Hey die cut up at the top. I really think that pig is cute, especially when cut from felt. This next card features the W+9 Plush Panda die set that they came out with quite a while ago, but he works really well with these other cards that I created. This time I created the hinge at the top of the card. You can see he stands on his little feet, and he just opens upward instead of to the side like I did before. The die set also includes the pieces to create the flower that he's holding. This one was so much fun to make. I plan to make a few more of these. Just make sure you back his feet with some cardstock, not just use felt, so that he has some stability to stand on them. My last animal stitched shaped card is a little white puppy that's holding a heart with an ice cream cone on it. That's from another W+9 die set. He's also holding a little folded heart card, just like my example earlier. But when you take the little heart card out, there'll be a greeting on the inside and a little gift card. This is for an ice cream shop, so I thought it was perfect with a little ice cream cone added to the front. You can also see that the size of the pup die is just perfect to hold a gift card tucked inside. I really like to give gift cards as gifts because they're so practical, and I especially like to give them to teachers. But by creating this little stitched card to hold it, you're adding something really special to it. W+9 also just came out with a die set that creates some fun cactus pieces. For this one, I die cut from felt, and I stitched them together with die cut cardstock pieces. This one was pretty quick to put together, surprisingly, since there's very little stitching. I also added a W+9 Hello die cut over it, and some little pink beads to the top of the cactus flowers. What's nice about these dies is that you can use them to create elements that you can add on to a simple 4 1/4 by 5.5 inch card. I feel the stitching and the felt pieces really add to the homemade feel. Okay, so there you have some examples using these great new products from W+9. If you are interested in more about these products, check below in the YouTube description or head to the website. Thanks for spending time with me. Have a great day, and we'll see you soon.